In the Custom House preface, Hawthorne resolved to undo the curse he had inherited from his Puritan ancestors. The romance of the Scarlet Letter made good on Hawthorne's resolution by undermining belief in the infallibility of the Puritans' judgment. It was the Puritans' unquestioning fidelity to the truth of their moral allegories that compelled them to reduce Hester Prynne to an unchanging personification of adultery. Hawthorne invented a narrator who re-entered this scene of decisive Puritan judgment in order to instill reservations and second thoughts about the allegorical imagination justifying it. It was Hawthorne's narrative art of second thinking that cultivated the deliberative attitude within his readers, designed to undo the hold of the allegorical imagination. In the name of the sovereign power of God's judgment, the Puritan divines had decreed that Hester Prynne was indistinguishable from the mortal sin of adultery she was compelled to personify. As Hester Prynne stood immobilized with Pearl on that scaffold in the opening scene of the Scarlet Letter, she bore the full force of the Puritans' devastating judgment. Hester nevertheless decided to stay within the Puritan community that had excommunicated her. Remaining within Old Boston as a caregiver to its poor, its sick, and its dying, Hester's daily practices of compassion gradually brought about a change in the Puritans' heart. Hester's selfless acts of kindness prompted members of the Puritan community to question the fairness of the allegorical disposition that had demanded her continued exclusion. More inclined to interpret the Scarlet Letter as a sign of Hester's angelic virtues, the Puritans began to recognize the central part Hester played in the transformation of Old Boston from a community of judgment to a community of care. In changing their interpretation of the significance of Hester's character, the Puritans had also broken free of the constraints that moral allegories had imposed on their hearts and minds. This change of attitude led the Puritans to question their judgments of all of the other chief actors in the romance. All that is except for one. Roger Chillingworth never wavered from his commitment to exact merciless, cold-hearted revenge from Arthur Dimmesdale, because he never displayed an inkling of remorse for the hate-filled jealousy that consumed him. Chillingworth was unlike Hester and unlike Arthur and unlike the other characters in Hawthorne's counter-allegory, in that he had himself chosen to become identical with the vice of revenge that the Puritans, as well as the romance's narrator, believed he personified. The narrator corroborated the Puritans' allegorization of Chillingworth in the book's concluding chapter, with the observation that after Dimmesdale's death, all the strength and vitality departed from Chillingworth's body, insomuch that he positively withered up, shriveled away, and almost vanished from mortal sight. However, before letting Chillingworth out of his sight, the narrator issued a judgment on the state of Chillingworth's soul, comparable in its merciless severity to the Puritan divines' damnation of Hester at the romance's beginning. This unhappy man had made the very principle of his life to consist in the pursuit and systematic exercise of revenge. And when, by its completest triumph, consummation, that evil principle was left with no further material to support it. When, in short, there was no more devil's work on earth for him to do, It only remained for the unhumanized mortal to betake himself whither his master would find him tasks enough and pay him his wages duly. This sentence traffics in the retributive attributes and final judgment, systematic exercise of revenge, the very principle of his life, completest triumph, consummation of that evil principle, devil's work, unhumanized mortal, that the Puritans' allegorical imagination had attributed to the target of their moral condemnations. In exacting eternal vengeance on Roger Chillingworth, has not the narrator practiced the accursed arts of allegory that Hawthorne wrote the romance of the Scarlet Letter to undermine? At the very moment that Hawthorne's reader wonders whether the narrator has not himself practiced the revenge he condemns, they come upon a sentence that marks a quite literal change of the narrator's disposition. But to all these shadowy beings, so long our nearer acquaintances, as well Roger Chillingworth as his companions, we would fain be merciful. Rather than tethering Chillingworth's immortal soul to the unhumanizing specter of revenge, the narrator has arrived at a reevaluation of his motives for revenge that reimagines Chillingworth's hatred as a form of thwarted love. It is a curious subject of observation and inquiry whether hatred and love be not the same thing at bottom. Each, in its utmost development, supposes a high degree of intimacy and heart knowledge. Each renders one individual dependent for the food of the affections and spiritual life upon another. Each leaves the passionate lover or the no less passionate hater forlorn and desolate by the withdrawal of his subject. In registering these second thoughts about the motives for Chillingworth's acts of vengeance, in the afterword to this romance, the narrator has effected a profound revisioning of the Puritans' moral allegory. This afterword thereby fosters the recognition that Chillingworth could only express his love for Hester by acting out his revenge on the man who had violated it. All the love Chillingworth felt for Hester inhabited his hate-filled revenge for Dimmesdale, who, in this sense, became his lover, thereby completing the love triangle and undoing the curse of the allegorical imagination. Can you find comparable passages in which Hawthorne instigates second thoughts and second thinking within your reading practices?